we left it before. That is, how do I create those gradients? All right, so I made these for you. How do you make them? Because I would like you to eventually actually color your tiger pink and purple, right? And have gradients with those colors. So in Illustrator, this is the gradient tool. And because I have this tiger selected, you can see that there's already something there. So I'm going to actually start from a brand new document. When you start from a brand new document, you see that actually the gradient bar just goes from white to black. So if I created a shape right now and tried to assign a gradient, that's what it gives me. So how do I actually add colors to this slider so that I actually create a gradient with colors? You click right underneath this gradient bar. By the way, this is the gradient palette right here. If you don't see it, go under Window Gradients right here, right? So I'm going to go into that gradient palette, and I'm going to click right below my gradient bar. So I'm going to click right here. And you see that these buckets show up. These are the buckets of color. And this is the marker that determines how much black and how much white I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually double click on this white, and this shows up. And what is frustrating to me is that it's strange that Illustrator engineers haven't figured out yet that if I'm double clicking on that bucket, it's because I want color. So I wish that they showed me color in here, but they don't. What they do is they allow you to go in the swatches, and these are the pre-made swatches that Illustrator has for you. And that's kind of what you do. You can go in the swatches and say, I want purple, for example, here, and I want, you know, blue right there, for example. Now, how do I add more? And by the way, you could also go under colors. Let's say you don't want to use these pre-made colors the Illustrator has for you, the swatches. You can go under here, and then you can decide which color you want. If, for example, that blue, you want it to be more greenish, there it is. So what if I want more than two colors? What you have to do is you just simply, as you can see, my arrow, when I move close to the bottom of the bar, gets a plus sign. So if I click on here, it creates another bucket. And then I obviously can double click, and I can again go in the swatches or go in the colors and say I want that to be green, for example. You guys see all that? So you basically, by clicking on my slider, I can add as many colors as I want. And if I decide that I actually don't want a color, let's say you say, you know what, I like this green, but I don't like this middle purple, you can just click and drag outside of your slider, and it will remove that color. Another thing you could do is you could choose that color you want it only at 50% if you decide that you want an opacity effect. Let's say you have a gradient box that has some text in a certain spot, and you want that color in that area where you have the text to kind of fade out, to be less powerful, to have a transparency effect. You can add it through here, and you can obviously control also the location through here. Also remember, the gradient could be also radial. I might decide that I want this one to be a radial gradient. And so at that point, when you have a shape, right now I'm creating a shape right here. And now my gradient is the stroke. Obviously, if I want it, that's my gradient right now. I just inverted the stroke and the fill. So this is my gradient. So let's say I really like this gradient and I want to save it for future use. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the swatches. In the swatches right here. I apologize. And these are kind of swatches that Illustrator has already made for you. There are certain colors and patterns that Illustrator, by default has already made for you. And what you want to do is you want to grab the new color or the new gradient that you just made and drag it into the swatches. And now there it is. So if you even lose that, let's say I delete this one and it's gone, and I lose it. I don't have it anymore. But I say, wait a minute, I want to use that gradient onto this submarine. You can just go in the swatches and assign it. So that's kind of an easy way. We have one very extensive lecture on color using actually even a beautiful software called Cooler, and how to actually customize color, create your own colors, import them into a library in Illustrator. Down here, I can load a bunch of different Pantone colors. So I will show you a lot more about colors. But being that right now is the very first class, I want to keep it simple and just show you how do you create a gradient. So I'm going to create another gradient right now so that you see again how it gets done. And it starts by default right now. Right now there is a default gradient. It's kind of like interesting that it has kind of like a default to start with. But what you can do is if you have already a gradient in there, you just simply double click and change those colors. If you don't have it, if it starts, as I said, with the, I'm going to start a new document to show you when you don't have anything in memory, how does the gradient start. It starts like this. How do you customize it? You just simply click on it and you'll start getting these buckets of colors, and then you can go in and add. Remember, the default when you double click on the color is this odd thing that you don't see anything. You don't see the colors. It's black and white. So if you want the colors, you have to go onto this little box right here and say that you want, instead of grayscale, you want CMYK or RGB, whatever format your file is. Right now it's CMYK right there. So I'm going to say CMYK. And now I can start seeing colors. So unfortunately, you basically have to go in this box to get finally the colors to show up, because at first it gives you just a black and white version. This is it. That's what it gives you. This is really odd. I feel like it should give you pretty quick a color version, since color is what you want to import. So you add as many colors as you need. Right here I'm going to add a darker purple, for example, right here. And right here I'm going to add a darker pink right there. And now once you say, okay, I really like this gradient, I want to save it for the future, you go in the swatches and you drag it onto the swatches where you need it right there. So later on, if you create any shape, let's say later on I lose this gradient. Oops. Actually, let me select it. Let's say you have a red color there and you create a shape and you say, but I wanted that gradient in there. You can simply go and click on there and it will assign the gradient. So what I want you to do, guys, is I want you to create custom gradients. Like I created these 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. I want you to create 4 new ones that you add to this swatches palette, and create a tiger that is a lot more colorful than that. Means the eyes, instead of green, might be like blue and purple, and the nose might be like pink and green. So I want you to kind of really play with these gradients and do as many as you can, so you will retain how to do them. Any questions, guys?